A very good morning to all of you. I just want to begin by saying that we must thank the person who's responsible for this initiative in the first place, because this is a unique initiative taken by government. Here is a minister who's saying that, look, I don't want to bring out propaganda material. I don't want to just listen to the good news about what my government is doing. I want an objective, high-quality assessment of where we are as far as rural development is concerned. And we want to engage the best minds in the country. We want a report which stands on its own in academic excellence. And we want an assessment, an evaluation, and some pointers about the direction in which we need to go forward. And it is Jairam Ramesh's initiative which has led to the publication of this report, as also, if I may mention, an earlier report on the biggest employment program in human history, the MGNREGA. The Samiksha report was a similar collection. In fact, it was an compilation of all research done on the program with not a single word from the government side, so to speak. It was really an addition to scholarly work on the subject which enabled scholars across the world to gain access to what has been studied, written, and said about NREGA across the world. And I believe I must congratulate the IDFC Foundation for again bringing out a first-rate report which gives us a snapshot of what is happening in rural India. And I'd particularly like to congratulate Dr. Ritu Anand, whose tireless efforts day and night, because I work very closely with her and I know the pain that she has gone through, thanks in part also to my insistence on certain requirements to be met. So really this is an occasion of great joy and celebration for all of us, because I think a lot of effort went into this report. As I said, not only was it not supposed to be government propaganda material, but we had an excellent advisory council of the most eminent academics in the country who have researched and worked on rural development. There were practitioners who have worked on rural development, and all that wisdom put together has resulted in really an outstanding report which we have before us. I think Rajiv has given us an excellent summary, so I'm not going to try and attempt that. I think that was really a very good snapshot picture of what the report does. I just wanted to make a few observations on what I felt are the strengths of the report and some suggestions I have on the way we could do this work further in the years to come. I think the greatest strength of the report is that it does two things. It gives us a macro overview of rural dynamics. I would recommend to all of you to particularly enjoy the first chapter. It's a unique attempt. I have not seen a comparable piece of work anywhere in the literature on rural development, probably in any country. It's an extraordinary effort to try and capture multiple dimensions of rural dynamics in India. It's not, therefore, an assessment of whether we have done well or badly. It's not really at all from a government point of view at all. It's about, suppose you're a student of rural India. What should you know about rural India today? What is changing? What is not changing so fast? What is changing more rapidly? It covers the economic dimension. It covers the social dimension, which normally in reports like this would be ignored. It covers the political dimension. It covers the policy and programmatic dimension as well. So it's got a scope which is extraordinary. It's a macro overview. It is therefore crisply written and gives you a snapshot picture. Each of those sections in the first chapter actually are major agendas for future research, where something has been put forward which should be discussed, challenged, debated, agreed or disagreed with, and I think that's a really powerful element in the report. But the report does much more. It actually further goes on to go into the micro details of many elements which Rajiv had very well summarized, which again give you the detailed content of what is happening in rural India, what are the attempts that the government is making to alleviate suffering, and what are the challenges that still remain. And I think each of those again gives pointers on both strengths and weaknesses and suggestions for possible changes that could be made in policy and programs going ahead. But as I said, it's not only addressed to government. It's actually addressed to every stakeholder in the rural landscape. And I would say strongly that this report bears translation into as many Indian languages as possible, at least into Hindi, because that would make its access to those about whom the report has been written, and I think that would be something which we should very seriously consider. I don't want to take too much of your time. I just wanted to make a few suggestions in how we could think of this report going ahead in the years to come. Firstly, I would say, whoever is the Minister for Rural Development, I would be personally very happy if Mr. Jairam Ramesh was the Minister next year at this time. I'm not sure whether he would be equally happy. But whoever be in this office, I think this is a feature that should become a regular feature, not only for the Ministry of Rural Development. Actually, it should be for all government ministries. That's a dream I have, that there would be such openness across the length and breadth of government. We don't always see it, I'll be the first to admit, but I think this is therefore setting an example. It's setting a benchmark of what we should try and attain, and we should make this a regular feature, a publication which should come out. What I would suggest further is that here in this report, we have, as Rajiv was saying, it's two sections. So one section is the overview and a certain thematic presentation. The other is the focus on the MG and REGA. Now that, of course, is important because this is such a major program. But my suggestion would be that in future, let's look at issues rather than programs. Because, that's the intellectual challenge, that's actually the challenge of understanding something in rural India. So let's take up an issue, for example, such as education or health or any other cross-cutting issue which would otherwise not get treated in that kind of depth, and look at that rather than looking at an evaluation of a government program. Now the minister is setting up the concurrent evaluation office within the Ministry of Rural Development. The Planning Commission has now set up the independent evaluation office. So there will be enough evaluation happening of government programs. But what we need from you, from a consortium of academics and from an institution like the IDFC Foundation, is a perspectival sort of, exercise where we try and understand issues in their depth and try and understand irrespective of programs and particular initiatives of the government. They will obviously enter that analysis, but it would be better, I would say, to have that kind of focus. I also just wanted to, in passing, mention a few of the weaknesses that I felt in the report. I was particularly, I would say unhappy that in the discussion on sustainability on water, there is no reference to the major paradigm shift that is being attempted in the 12th five-year plan. In fact, if I would say, just briefly comment on Rajiv's summary of the report, I would say if you read the 12th five-year plan, especially the chapters on rural development and water, which I have authored, you will find them much more severely critical of government than your own report. So I don't know which way to look at it. You've been very polite, I think, in many ways. But at the same time, I felt in the section on water and sustainability, there was a lack of understanding of what has actually been attempted, which is a major change from the past. I was particularly appalled to read that the government is contemplating the interlinking of rivers across the country. The government is not contemplating that. If you read the 12th five-year plan, there is a scathing critique of this whole initiative, this humongous plan to control nature and to divert rivers. Yes, there are pressures from the Supreme Court and others to move in that direction, but I think there is an understanding, and as you know, the 12th plan has now been approved by the National Development Council, so it's not only the government of India's view, it's the view of all state governments. We have taken a considered view of the kinds of risks involved in this initiative. So rather than that, actually something very different, and which is much more on the lines that you spoke about in the end, in terms of a participatory approach to water management, both for surface water and groundwater, an entire program of aquifer mapping and aquifer management with focus on groundwater, which is now the primary source of water for both irrigation and domestic use. So I think there are certain elements which I thought could have been better highlighted, particularly, as I said, the sections on water, but these are just suggestions for future use. I had particularly made these points as the chair of the Advisory Council. I was a little unhappy that that was not taken on board, but really this is not the time to be pointing to a few flaws in this report. I think what we have done is a landmark contribution to scholarship on rural India, and I once again commend the IDFC Foundation and thank the Minister for making this possible. Thank you.